Chapter 10. The Journey to Silverado. Sometimes you don't know when you're taking the first step through the door until you are already inside. Anne Voskamp. My name is Polly. About 10 years ago, my mother started showing subtle signs in behavior. She became irritated easily and sometimes snapped at people, which was totally out of character. Then her memory began to fail. As her dementia progressed, I tried to help her remember plans, act appropriately, and dress well. Unfortunately, because my expectations of her were unreasonable, she perceived my constant reminders as criticism. She began to call me the know-it-all, usually under her breath, but occasionally to my face. The hurt and misunderstanding that occurred between us before we realized what was going on was the most insidious aspect of her dementia. I am telling my story in the hope that others might learn from my experience. That one of my parents would experience memory loss was the last thing on my mind. My parents were both independent, active people into their senior years. My father had been a pilot and entrepreneur. My mother attended nursing school. Later, she focused on giving her 3 children the best possible childhood, raising us to see the world as a place full of open arms and possibility. Having a love for world travel, our parents often took exciting trips with large groups of friends. My mother did all the research, mapping, and reservations for everybody. When my father was diagnosed with cancer, things began to change. He survived, but it took a huge toll. Leaving their longtime home, my parents opted for a community that was easier to get around in. A year later, needing more assistance, they moved again. The following week, my father passed away. In the middle of our grief, my mother was told she could not continue to live there alone. We felt fortunate to locate an assisted living community close to my home where she had as much freedom as she wanted. 8 months after moving in, she fell and broke her elbow. During an examination at the hospital, X-rays revealed that she had an old hip fracture, so the surgeon put a screw in her hip. Afterwards, he sent her to a rehabilitation facility, which he described as a nice place to get her strength back. He gave instructions for weight-bearing exercises as tolerated. However, the doctor at the facility disagreed with the surgeon. The more my mother tried to get up and walk around, the more intent he was on stopping her. When my mother became upset, she struck out at one of the nurses. The staff's response was to put her in a plastic straitjacket and tell her she needed to calm down. When I visited 3 days later, I found my mother heavily drugged and tied to a wheelchair next to the nurse's station. Urine was dripping from her seat onto the floor. I asked for a towel and directions to the shower. The staff said there was no need to wash her because they showered the patients once a week. "I'm doing it now," I told them. I took her to the shower room. While I was showering her, she hit me. I wasn't angry. I understood her distress and rage. In an appointment with her surgeon a few days later, he discovered her arm had recently been rebroken. No one in the rehab facility had noticed. No wonder she wasn't happy. Eventually, my mother moved back to the assisted living community. For a while, she was active again and able to walk from her apartment to the grocery store 2 blocks away. Over time, however, her dementia became more evident. One day, the management contacted me to say she needed to move into the locked area immediately. While I tried to make the transition smooth for her, she was very distraught. She couldn't understand what she had done to cause this to happen. The staff gave her drugs to calm her down, which made her sleepy and affected her balance. Getting out of bed one morning, she hit her head on the dresser. After that, she was confined to a wheelchair because they said she was unstable. Shortly thereafter, she was sent to a psychiatric hospital to get her drugs straightened out. Within several days of arriving there, she was nearly comatose. When she wasn't in bed, they had her in a wheelchair with a lap buddy to keep her seated. I don't believe she was out of the chair much, if at all. 2 weeks into her stay at the psychiatric hospital, she was completely unable to walk, her feet having swollen to the size of footballs. Short of the torture, there was no way to describe the way my mother was treated at both the rehab facility and the psychiatric hospital. In a matter of weeks, she went from a woman who loved walking to an incapacitated shell of a person. Finally, the psychiatric hospital sent her to a medical center where doctors discovered she had a severe urinary tract infection and that her whole body was in trouble. Reeling from her stunning, rapid decline from too many drugs and inhumane care, I was desperate to find a place where I could be certain she would be treated like a human being. One evening, when my husband and I were having dinner with friends, I poured out the whole story. Listening sympathetically, one of them referred me to his friend, Donna, who had worked for Silverado. Donna was an angel. Through her, I connected with Silverado Senior Family Ambassador Doreen, who listened closely and helped me find the solutions I needed in order of importance. First thing, replace my mother at Silverado. When she arrived at Silverado, it was clear she was still severely over-medicated. As the drugs were reduced, my real mom began to emerge, smiling and aware of her surroundings. Although she was not yet capable of joining the engagement programs, we dared to have hope again. What happened to us is typical of countless families faced with caring for parents, spouses, or others with dementia. We tend to assume that everyone in the elder care field knows more than we do. I learned that many of them do not. Fortunately, my mother survived the nightmare and is thriving at Silverado. She has the support, encouragement, and love that she needs to be the best she can at this phase of her life. She has both feet planted firmly in her world, and with that confidence, she can be happy and loving again. How I had missed my mother. Now I have her back. One of 9 children, Bobby was a girl who grew up in an Air Force family and moved frequently around the globe. For 15 years, Bobby's grandmother, Mama, accompanied the large family on their military postings, always relocating with them when new orders came. Although Bobby easily made friends with local children everywhere she went, Bobby especially enjoyed Mama's attention, taking walks and baking cookies with her. At age 99, Mama returned to her beloved homeland of Guam, where she died in comfort, surrounded by friends after a full, satisfying life. For Bobby's parents, it was more complicated. Her mother was diagnosed with both Parkinson's and Alzheimer's in her late 60s. When it became too difficult to care for her at home, she moved to an assisted living community that offered dementia care. Bobby and the family visited her constantly. Bobby's sister played the grand piano and led the residents in singing while their father popped corn for Bobby to pass around. Although their mother had wished to spend her final days at home, the family was unaware of home hospice for terminally ill. She passed away at the assisted living community. 2 years later, Bobby's father had a major heart attack. Gravely ill in the weeks that followed, he was placed on hospice. The loving kindness and attentiveness of the hospice staff touched Bobby deeply. Watching them care for her father, she thought, "This is something I want to do." After her father died, Bobby contacted an assisted living community and offered to volunteer. Finding fulfillment, she expanded her efforts to other senior communities. She helped residents shop and escort them to doctor's appointments. Noticing her talent and compassion, Silverado Hospice offered her a staff position overseeing its volunteers. Thus, Bobby became a family care advocate and admissions coordinator. In that capacity, Bobby picked up the phone one day and heard distress on the other end of the line. "My husband, Hal, was diagnosed with dementia 3 years ago," the voice said. "Am I speaking with someone who can help me?" Bobby assured her she was. "My name is Phoebe. I've been taking care of Hal all this time, and I'm not sure how much longer I can hold up." "We'll do everything we can," Bobby said. "Tell me more about what's going on." Her voice trembling, Phoebe explained that at first it had been manageable. Even though Hal's dementia worsened following his gallbladder surgery, she could still take him shopping and go to the park as long as she had help. What mattered was that they were together, partners in every sense of the word. Married over 30 years, they had worked together for 2 decades at Hal's business, and they were the parents of 6 children. "Things are worse now," Phoebe went on. "He can't form sentences, brush his teeth, bathe, or handle toileting, and he doesn't always recognize me. I'm afraid his needs are overtaking my abilities." Phoebe had spent many hours researching how to care for him and learning what he was going through. To her surprise, she discovered that hospice benefits are often available well before patients enter the process of actively dying. Searching the internet, she found information about Silverado Hospice. "That's how I found you," she told Phoebe over the phone. "I want the very best care for Hal, but I'm hoping he can remain at home with me." Her voice breaking, Phoebe added, "He's the love of my life." "I understand completely," Bobby said. "Let me tell you about what we do and how we might be able to assist you and Hal." "We'll want to learn about Hal as a person to understand his life story," she said. "We'd also like to get to know you and your family. That way we can shape a care program that's just right for Hal and enable us to support and assist you as well." Feeling the knot in her stomach start to ease, Phoebe asked, "What can I do to get started?" "The first step is obtaining a physician's order for Hal to be evaluated and approved for hospice," Bobby said. "If hospice care is deemed appropriate, he could be admitted. Now, when I say admitted, I mean enrolled in our hospice care program. He would continue to live with you at home, and we would come there to provide care." "I'll contact our doctor right away," Phoebe said. When she hung up the phone, Phoebe got in the car and drove to the physician's office to ask for the order. Obtaining it, she called Bobby back the same day. "I have the physician's order from our doctor, and I'd like to come over with it right now," Phoebe told her. When she arrived at the Silverado Hospice office, a woman was waiting outside the building. "Phoebe?" the woman asked. "Yes," Phoebe responded. "I'm Bobby," the woman smiled, opening her arms wide. The two embraced, and tears filled Phoebe's eyes. She wasn't alone anymore. Bobby escorted Phoebe into her office. After signing the consent form for Hal's hospice care to begin, Phoebe and Bobby met with a Silverado colleague named Jennifer to discuss what would happen next. The team caring for Hal would include an attending physician, a medical director, a social worker, an RN, a case manager, aides, a spiritual care coordinator, as well as volunteers. Together, they would care for Hal at home. "Our focus is to make this time of Hal's life the best it can be," Jennifer said. Bobby leaned towards Phoebe and placed a lap blanket in her hands. "This is a gift from us to thank you for giving us the honor of caring for Hal," she said. "We are not only committed to being there for your husband, we are also here for you." Touching the soft material, Phoebe felt hope and peace for the first time in years. The next 6 months, the last of Hal's life, were as the couple wanted. They were together in their home because of Silverado Hospice. Phoebe knew her husband was in excellent hands with its care team. Just as important, Bobby and the others with Silverado understood exactly what she was going through. They were always available to listen and offer encouragement. Their support enabled Phoebe to withstand the blow of Hal's death. Later, she would tell Bobby that without her friendship and the help of Silverado Hospice, she might have turned to medicating her emotional pain. Instead, Phoebe was able to put one foot in front of the other and move forward. Some months after Hal's passing, Phoebe and Bobby met at a cafe. After they settled at their table, Phoebe reached into her handbag. "Bobby, since words will never express how much your support has meant to me, I am hoping this will show you how I feel," she said, giving Bobby a small box. Bobby smiled. "I brought something for you, too," she said, pulling a package out of her tote bag. "You didn't need to give me a gift," Phoebe said. "You've done so much for me already." "Phoebe, you've done as much for me," Bobby said. "Knowing that I've helped you tells me that I'm making a difference, that I am achieving the purpose I had when I set out on this journey to assist others." Both women were quiet for a moment, then they opened their presents. The box Phoebe gave Bobby contained a crucifix, while Phoebe discovered a shadow box in the package from Bobby. "It's beautiful," they exclaimed in unison. As much as they treasured those presents, Bobby and Phoebe also shared the gift of an enduring friendship, which now touches many other people. These days, Phoebe volunteers alongside Bobby as a family ambassador at Silverado Hospice. She donates many hours each month to helping others, recalling how she herself was once so much in need. Milton's condition was progressing rapidly. He was forgetting things, suffering intense anxiety, slurring his words, and falling. Since the day he heard the doctor's diagnosis of Huntington's disease, he had gone from being a leader in a scientific field to a person who needed assistance with almost everything. The one constant in his life was his beloved dog Roscoe, who displayed endless loyalty and love for him. However, a crisis was looming. Milton's condition was reaching a point where remaining at home would no longer be feasible. After his diagnosis, Milton had appointed his sister, Elena, to take charge of his affairs. Now Elena was worried. What senior living community would allow Roscoe, an 85-pound Labrador retriever mix, to move in with her brother? Elena's initial round of calls confirmed her suspicions. The few that permitted dogs only accepted small ones. What's more, the dog owner would be responsible for all of its needs from walking and feeding to visits to the veterinarian. If the resident lost that capacity, the dog would have to leave. Elena spent many anxious nights wondering what to do. Then a friend suggested Elena contact Silverado. He had heard it had a reputation for being pet-friendly. Skeptical as she was, she called Silverado. She was told, "It's true. We have a real menagerie here. Pets of all sizes are welcome." Instantly, Elena made an appointment to see for herself. The German Shepherd who greeted Elena at the door with tail wagging turned out to be just one of the variety of dogs, cats, birds, and fish living alongside Silverado residents. Silverado Family Ambassador explained to her the presence of animals contribute to the community's overall living environment. Caring for the animals kept the residents connected to a purposeful life. For a new resident especially, preserving the bond with their pet was vital. So often the memory-impaired living at home lose connection with people, the family ambassador said. As they become isolated, their dog or cat may be the one true friend that remains, always accepting them just as they are. "You have described my brother's situation exactly," Elena said. The family ambassador nodded. "That's why we encourage residents to bring their animals with them. As long as Roscoe gets along with the other pets, he is more than welcome here." "What if my brother can't take care of Roscoe?" Elena said. "Believe me, that won't be a problem. Lots of people, including our other residents, will be happy to help." When the day came for Milton to move to Silverado, Roscoe's dog bed was loaded into the truck along with the owner's furniture. For the next 4 years, the pair lived happily together at the community. Roscoe was almost always at Milton's side, except for periodic sojourns by the open door of the engagement director's office. He had taken a fancy to lying there on his stomach, chin on his paws, to watch the passing scene. These occasional times apart from his owner stopped when it became clear that Milton's life was ending. Staff members placed Roscoe's bowl next to Milton's bed, knowing that the dog would be unwilling to step away from his owner even for the short time it would take to eat and drink. As Milton drew his last breath, Roscoe's head lay on his hand. Afterward, Roscoe retreated to quiet corners of Silverado, where he lay silent and motionless. His food went untouched. "His heart is broken from losing Milton," Elena told Silverado administrators, tears welling at the sound of her brother's name. "I don't know what to do, because I can't have Roscoe come to live with me." "Silverado is Roscoe's home now," the administrator said. "We would be happy for him to stay here and be part of our family." In relief, Elena hugged the other woman, saying, "Thank you so much. I know what this would have meant to my brother." Everyone in Silverado did what they could to cheer up the sad dog. Residents and staff alike petted him, took him for walks, and invited him to sit with them. Family members brought treats to tempt his appetite. Finally, one afternoon, the resident engagement director looked up from her desk with delight and found that Roscoe had returned to his post by her open door.